Hello everyone, welcome to this video tutorial. Here we'll be talking about understanding designs and layout, box model and CSS positioning, inline block and flexbox, creating a simple navigation bar. So let's take a look at block and inline elements. Every HTML element has a default display value depending on what type of element it is. The two most common display values are block and inline. So we'll be talking about block level elements. Block level elements always start on a new line and the browser automatically adds some space, a margin before and after the element. So we'll be looking at the two commonly used block elements are the P tag and the div tag. The P tag element defines a paragraph in an HTML document. The P tag element defines a paragraph in an HTML document, and the div element defines a division or a section in HTML documents. So these two elements, they are known as the block level elements. Let's talk about inline elements. Inline element does not start on a new line. With inline elements, you can highlight a text, making the text italic, or you abbreviate the text using inline elements. Some examples of inline elements are the strong tag and the span tag. Those tags are used to highlight a specific text in a statement or to make a text bold. Now let's take a look at what is Flexbox. A flexbox is a layout method for arranging items in rows like this or in column like this. Now let's look at CSS box model. The CSS box model is essentially a box that wraps around every HTML element. It consists of contents, paddings, borders, and margins. So an example of CSS box model. So this is an example of a CSS box model. The outer line is the margin, the green line is the border, and you can see the gray background, that is the padding, and the white color background is the content. So understanding CSS box model will make it easy for styling your HTML. So let's take a look at CSS positioning. The position property specifies the type of positioning method used for an element. There are 5 values of position property to position your HTML elements. 5 types of position values, which are position static, position relative, position fixed, position absolute, and position sticky. So we'll be talking about each value step by step. Let's look at position static. An element with position static is not positioned in any special way. It is always positioned according to the normal flow of the page. This is to tell you that when you set an HTML element or a container to position static, it will remain where it is in your document, in your browser, and this element cannot change position. So let's talk about position relative. An element with position relative is positioned relative to its normal position. An element with position relative is positioned relative to its normal position. This is to tell you that an element's position relative will move away from its normal position. The element will move away from its normal position to right or to left. Now let's talk about positioned fixed. An element with position fixed is position relative to the viewport, which means it always stays in the same place even if the page is scrolled. The top, right, and left properties are used to position the element. This is to tell you that an element that is position fixed will remain where it is even if you are scrolling the browser. Examples are like the nav bar where there is clickable link. You can see some nav bar when you are scrolling the page, the nav bar will remain as it is. That is an example of position fixed element. So let's talk about positioned absolute. An element with position absolute is position relative to the nearest positioned ancestor instead of position relative to the viewport like fixed. This is to tell you that when there are two elements of the same parent and one is positioned absolute, that one position absolute will lap this and positioned exactly where the other element is. So this is an example of element that is positioned absolute. So when you position an element absolute, it will be like this, except you set it with the right top and bottom property. So let's talk about positioned sticky. An element with position sticky is positioned based on the user's scroll position. This is to tell you that a sticky element toggles between relative and fixed depending on the scroll position. It is position relative until a given offset position is met in the viewport. Then it sticks in place like position fixed. This is an example of a position sticky element.